Hello, my paper peeps. Today I want to share with you a simple greeting card using 3D embossing folders. This is a new twist to embossing. It's triple embossing and it actually works. Now, if you've seen this technique, then my bad. I don't know what rock I've been hiding under, but if you haven't seen this technique, then you'll want to stick around for this one because I was actually playing around with some of my mixed media the other day and came up with this and I thought, wow, this actually works. Now, I'll be using this stamp, Lattes and Lipstick, to create this card, as well as this 3D texture fades and some cardstock, which is 110 pounds. To prevent any tearing and creasing of the paper, I highly recommend a thicker cardstock like this 110 pounds. Now, I'm using this stamp not just because we're in the Java journals, but because it is time for me to create cards for my husband's staff members, who I love to bless on an annual basis. When it's their birthdays, I either get them a Starbucks gift card or a gift card to Sephora. So I thought that this would be perfect for creating new cards. Now, the first thing you want to do is kind of measure out where you're going to place the stamp. And because this 3D texture fade is really just a background stamp, there's no real image on it, you don't necessarily have to try to find an area that you want to place the stamp on. In general, if there is an image that you want to cover up or not cover up, that's when you would try to line up the stamp with the embossing folder. But here, I'm just going to put it in the middle. So stamping before embossing really actually removes that step of having to stamp and die cut your sentiments to be later added to the card. So that's where this whole simplicity comes from. And I'm going to use Versafine to stamp this text. I love it because it is by far the best when it comes to details. And because it's a pigment ink, it'll actually dry a lot slower, which is to our advantage because we actually need the paper saturated with this ink and we want it to dry at a very slow pace. So in order to achieve that, I highly recommend that you saturate the page 3 times. So stamp with the Versafine 3 times. Even though the text is still quite wet, you still want to move quickly. You don't want to dawdle. Now here I'm using the Big Shot, and all you need is one stamp pad and the embossing folder and your piece of paper. I also actually added a shim. Actually, it's not a shim. It's an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock that I folded in half just to give it a little bit more resistance so that I get the image embossed really well. But even before I do all that, I do recommend spraying the back of the card so that you can get a very clear embossed image. And using this spritzing water technique, what it really does is it just softens the fibers of the paper, preventing the cracking that you might usually see when you use embossing folders. And this process ensures that the folder layers will actually easily be pushed into the paper, creating that very crisp embossed image. The next thing I'm going to do is use clear embossing powder and just cover the whole text there. The reason why I want to do that is because I'll be doing one more technique to the background. So embossing this acts like a resist so that the next technique that I do on this card will not affect the text. Even if you didn't do anything else to this card, I just find embossing the text with clear embossing powder just gives it that beautiful shine and shimmer. Okay, so we've embossed with the embossing folder. We've embossed with clear embossing powder. Now we are going to emboss for the 3rd time. And I know you're going to be shocked, but we're actually going to place Versamark all over the image, including the text. And some of you are probably going, is that even going to work? You're triple embossing and you're going to emboss on top of the text. How's that going to work? Well, you know what? This is where I was actually fooling around and shockingly, it does work. The key is not using embossing powder. I actually used embossing glaze. So here I am using the Vintage Photo Embossing Glaze. And this is the one thing that I've come to love over the course of the last year is embossing glaze. Because in my crafting and in my scrapbook journaling, I found that it is one of the best mixed media techniques to use in your journaling because anything that happens underneath actually still shines through. And that's what I love about this. So do you see how the image, even though it was covered with embossing glaze, that image underneath still pops and is still just as vibrant as it was before we placed the embossing glaze. Now you're probably wondering, Chris, that's not simple. I'm like, it is simple because it's mixed media with not all the mixed media. It's like one thing, or I guess two things, but it's just a way to add a little bit of glitz and glam to your cards and three-dimensional effect without doing too much. And one of the things that I love is creating simple cards where the envelopes and the card bases are made for me. And this one I purchased from Hobby Lobby, and they have an array of colors. So if I want to create cards, this is easy. Like I don't have to do, a mat for this because you don't need a mat. And the great thing with these cards is that they're slightly smaller than most of your embossing folders. So for example, in this embossed image, I mean, obviously I didn't get around all the corners there, which is not a big deal. Sometimes it's very difficult to ink out all those edges. And I like just having a smaller card that I can just cut the image down to size. And then if I need to, I can just take some distress ink to distress the edges of the card so it blends in a little bit better. And then I just add my little gem, and there you have a mixed media, simple, triple embossed card. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more tips and tricks on how to jazz up those journals, those cards, here's a video that I did last week, which gives you 24 scrapbooking tips and tricks to try in 2024. Until I see you in that video or my other videos, please have a fantastic week. Get in that craft room and enjoy and craft your heart away. Take care, and we'll see you in my other videos. Bye!